welcome back to Lorehammer. We got a fun episode of Roboute Guilliman Part 2 coming at you here. I'm your host, Mark. We got Christian joining me once again for this.
Hey.
Oh, are you excited for Part 2 of pretty much Mr. Do Nothing? That's kind of what I decided during this episode when writing. It's like, he's a cool character. He does a lot in the Great Crusade, doesn't do a whole lot during the Heresy, does a whole shit ton during the Great Scouring.
We'll see. I don't love or hate Guilliman, but I think people love to hate him.
Yeah. I'm not even saying I hate him. I actually quite like him, but yeah, he kind of just gets kiboshed in the Horus Heresy. We'll go over it obviously soon enough, but yeah. Anyways, we also got Gerald with us.
Hello there.
Excited? You like Rogel Dorn and you like Roboute Guilliman, eh?
I honestly, like, anyone who knows me knows I like to rag on the Ultramarines for a lot of reasons, but I actually do like Guilliman. Like, I would probably prefer him over Rogel Dorn if I had to choose between the two.
Okay. You don't like stern man. Your father was a stern man, and it reminds you too much of that. So you're going a little softer with Roboute Guilliman's touch. Okay, I get it.
It's the logistical, analytical side that really speaks to me.
Yeah, no, he's a great character. Like, I joke he doesn't do a whole lot, but he does do a whole lot. He founds a whole empire during the Heresy. He does a whole lot, but like, it's like everything he does doesn't really affect the Heresy. So it's kind of one of those fun things, but he's always up to something. So yeah, before we get into Roboute Guilliman and all the stuff, the Horus Heresy and the Great Scouring, let's do some quick housekeeping. Come join the Discord. Super easy to get on. You just got to go into the podcast description and there's links to all the different places. And while you're clicking links, you can click the Patreon link. You can click, I don't know, the merchandise link if you want. You can go buy some t-shirts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you can always help the show by joining the Imperial Tithe. You get an ad-free version of the show for only $2.50 and get the live stream versions for only $5. So cheap is free.
Cheap is free, and hey, our Barry Vengeance is very cheap. And speaking of the live stream version, just join on Patreon to get access to that perk, and you get to be able to talk with us and see what we're, see our faces and whatnot. And since we're talking about the Primarch in true Gerald fashion, I have one right here.
Yes, there he is. The old third-party knockoff Guilliman. But no, he's tight. That's sweet. I love the flowing cape and tight.
Flaming sword.
One thing I didn't like was he has the flaming sword, which is supposed to be his 40, which is really his 40k version. But I'm not going to split hairs.
Yeah.
You could have cut it off, Gerald, if you cared that much.
I could have, but then he would have just had a hilt, and I didn't have anything to replace it. So that would have just been weird.
Leave him with the hilt.
Oh, man. Cool. If you guys join all the live stream, all that kind of stuff, you can check out, watch. You can also chat with us and call in guests at the end of the episode. Just like shoot me a message during the show. Hey, I got something I want to say at the end, and we can get you on instead of me trying to like fill time while we're waiting for somebody to click links that they don't click. So yeah, cool. Let's get into this episode. We are going to be doing Roboute Guilliman. We'll start off with just a quick recap about his origins and what he did in the Great Crusade. Mention all 500 of his worlds by name and paragraph each. We'll let you know about everyone. Just a quick recap, no big deal. And then we'll dive into the Ultramarines and then the start of the Horus Heresy. So couple things happened to him. There's the Battle of Calth. Everyone seems to know that very prominent battle. Probably one of the bigger battles in 40 or in 30K. And then we did the Shadow Crusade, which we just covered with Angron on our last Primarch kind of episode. So that'll be a nice little fun recap to talk about that again. Imperium Secundus, that little empire that he set up on the far side. He's always setting up his little empires, this guy. And then the second Battle of Davin. I hadn't heard of that until this episode, so we'll learn about that. And then the Siege of Terra. Does he make it in time? And after that, we'll do the Great Scouring. He's really the avenging son, the rebuilder in the aftermath of the heresy. He's kind of the guy that really holds it all together. Even like Primarchs like Rogel Dorn, like they become like almost like that vengeful son, like a crusader, where like, Guilliman is making sure the planets are being taken care of, rations are being sent places, all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the second founding. And then finally, where did he go during the Battle of Tessala? Yeah, so it's going to be a fun little episode. Cover his personality, all the kind of cool stuff, what kind of war gear he uses. He wrote some more books that we'll talk about in this episode. That's kind of fun.
My man, published author, published conqueror, many successes under his belt.
Yeah. Everyone, all the Primarchs always said they wanted to write a book, but Guilliman was the only one, eh? And maybe Logar, I guess.
Yeah, but no one reads his.
No, that's trash.
Except for
It's
the
like
entire church of
no,
the Emperor.
it's just a poor fan fiction of the Emperor. It's not. It's fucking rubbish.
Not canon, okay?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, plot twist. The Imperium still reads it to this day.
All right. Let's start off with our recap. Roboute Guilliman. Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines and son of the Emperor, stands apart from his brothers as both a master strategist and a visionary statesman. Where many Primarchs excelled solely at war, Guilliman believed conquest was meaningless without stability, governance, and long-term prosperity. Known as the Avenging Sun and Master of Ultramar, he combined ruthless battlefield efficiency with a scholar's mind for law, logistics, and administration. To him, empire was something to be built and maintained, not merely won, making him one of the Imperium's most capable architects of civilization, as well as one of the greatest generals. Guilliman's story began with the Chaos Gods scattered when the Chaos Gods scattered the Emperor's infant Primarchs across the galaxy, casting his gestation pod onto the harsh but disciplined world of Macragge. Discovered and adopted by the ruling consul, Conor Guilliman, he matured at an extraordinary rate, displaying unmatched intelligence, leadership, and strategic brilliance from childhood. After crushing a rebellion that killed his adoptive father, he assumed control of the planet and reorganized it into a model state built on merit, law, and efficiency. By the time the Emperor arrived, Guilliman had already forged a thriving interstellar domain, proving himself not just a conqueror, but a builder of enduring order. During the Great Crusade, Guilliman and the Ultramarines became one of the Imperium's most effective instruments of expansion. Their campaigns were defined not by reckless slaughter, but by careful planning, overwhelming force, and meticulous post-war reconstruction. Guilliman ensured that each conquered world was stabilized, defended, and integrated into Imperial systems before moving on, dramatically increasing long-term compliance. His legion grew into one of the largest and most reliable, rivaled only by Horus's forces, and Guilliman himself earned a reputation as a commander who could wage total war while still thinking generations ahead.
Yeah, and in that way, he's even better than Horus. Like Horus was a conqueror and stuff, and could get worlds into compliance even without shooting shots. He was still a negotiator and all that, but he wasn't building the empire that same way. None of the Primarchs were.
Yeah, it's more than just conquering your foe. You also have to get them in a place where they're loyal subjects, where they have like running water. There isn't the desire to rebel. If they get everything, if their quality of life is even better under your rule, why would they?
Yeah, like there's a lot of Primarchs where it's like, okay, Layman Russ, he likes fighting. He likes fighting more than like doing anything else. Maybe drinking, he might like drinking, but like Roboute Guilliman likes the empire building. Like he's a good warrior, but that's not his passion. That's the means to the end to making something stable and lasting.
Yeah.
Like we joked one time, I think it was during like the Percharabu and Dorn episodes, like what video games will each Primarch play? And Guilliman would be the one here playing Civilization or Sim City or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of civilizations and simulated cities, we have the 500 worlds, also called the Realm of Ultramar. It was Guilliman's grand achievement beyond the battlefield. Rather than a loose collection of conquered systems, it was a carefully engineered federation of prosperous planets linked by trade, infrastructure, and mutual defense. Each world was designed to be largely self-sufficient yet interdependent, ensuring resilience against disaster or invasion. Governed through layered administration under Guilliman's authority, Ultramar stood as a rare example of stability and prosperity within the brutal Imperium, proof that humanity could thrive, not merely survive, under enlightened rule.
Cool. And to do all this, you know, he had his Space Marine Legion, the Ultramarines, and they reflected Guilliman's philosophy perfectly. Disciplined, adaptable, and relentlessly organized. They fought with calculated precision, prioritizing efficiency, coordination, and sustainability over reckless heroics. Every campaign followed a broader plan to secure lasting control, establish governance, and prepare for future expansion. Their blue and gold armor symbolized unity and authority, while their culture emphasized duty, merit, and rational conduct. To the Imperium, they were not just warriors, but exemplars of how Space Marines could serve as conquerors, protectors, and administrators all at once. Here's kind of an interesting thought we could go down. So, like, one of the big causes of the Horus Heresy obviously was chaos, but one of the kind of the more subtle was the Space Marines weren't sure what was going to become of them when the Great Crusade was over. When there's no more war to fight, what happens to the soldiers? Where Roboute Guilliman, he kind of dodges this by making them useful in so many other ways. And I wonder if the Emperor kind of wished all Space Marines had this, or like, you know, he was going to Thunder Warriors half the legions and maybe keep some of these ones that prove themselves a little more reliable outside of just war, you know?
I saw a video on that recently too. Like the Thousand Sons were meant to be like scholars of like esoteric arts or whatever. Then the word bearers were they were originally called the Imperial Heralds. So like there were some legions that had like kind of like an afterthought or like something that they can do once the Great Crusade was done. But on that same token though, I think it was something that the Lion had pointed out, like you're still going to have enemies to fight. There's still going to be threats that we don't yet know about. So you're still going to need something to fight for the Imperium. So why would you do to the Space Marines what you would do to the Thunder Warriors? But that's an Emperor problem. And we all know about how much of a shit daddy is. So
yeah. And as true as that is, for some of the legions who have expertise outside of combat, you also have others that are like, what do you do with the world eaters? What do you do even with the Blood Angels pre-Reformation? Like they weren't the only, you know, even people like the Space Wolves, like they are too chaotic for civilian rule. They don't really have a civilian application. And it is. I always liked that tension. Honestly, I wish they had stuck with it more. It felt that thought was like very early on in the Horus Heresy books, and they kind of like shied away from it and more into the like chaos side, which, you know, you kind of had to do anyways. But I always wish they'd maintain that like almost secular reason for rebellion. And I always thought it was a cool plot point. And I would prefer if it was one of those 40K mysteries. Like you can never know what would have been. Because it's just not what happened, right? So, like, did the Emperor have a plan for them, or was he going to Thunder Warrior them? In which case, that would just be rebellion, right? Like,
yeah.
Did he plan for the heresy from the start? The world may never know.
Yeah. Nor should they.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's fun though. That this legion didn't have to worry about that. They were, you know, the Iron Warriors, when they were garrisoning planets, it was a garrison of the planet, and they might have been the lord of that planet, and they ruled with an iron fist, but it was probably a shitty place to live, and it just wasn't good. And yeah, Ultramarines, they make it better.
Yeah.
And then the Horus Heresy starts. So at the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, Guilliman and the Ultramarines were tricked by Horus, who sent them to the Verdun system while Horus carried out his treasonous plot. When the treachery was revealed, the Ultramarines were poorly placed to react. The Ultramarines at this point had like 200,000 Astartes or something like that. I forget the exact number. I could look, but they had a lot of guys.
Yeah, they were the biggest, if not one of the biggest legions.
Mm-hmm. I think them and the Imperial Fists had like over 200,000 Marines each. Easy.
Yeah. So Horus, being the good tactician that he is, he's like, well, can I remove them from the board without having to fight them, or at least give myself as much time as possible? So he sets them off on a fight far away and out of his way.
Yeah, it's fun. He dealt with some legions like the Raven Guard and the Salamanders and the Iron Hands. He's like, I can take those 3 legions, but like the Ultramarines, we got to get them out of here. Like
distraction.
Yeah, and he kind of did the same with the Dark Angels too, a little bit. Kind of set them on some wild goose hunts.
I think he also did that to the White Scars because like no one was sure about them, so he just like sent them off way, way, way far away.
Yeah.
And with those opening betrayals, we step into the Battle of Calth. When War Master Horus renounced the Imperium and bent his will to the ruinous powers, igniting the Horus Heresy, he first sought to strip Terra of strength. Loyalist legions were drawn outward by design, scattered across distant fronts so that the Emperor would stand isolated when rebellion was finally declared. He commanded Guilliman to muster an expeditionary armada and make for Calth in the Viridian system, within Ultramar, to ready a crusade toward the eastern fringe, where he alleged a colossal orc Wa gathered, threatening Imperial dominion and demanding strategic response from Ultramar. The Ultramarines were to await the word-bearers, who would prosecute the campaign beside them. Guilliman did not know that the 17th Legion had long since pledged itself to chaos, nor that Lorgar embraced the chance to ensnare a rival he had brooded against for decades, closing the jaws of treachery with cold religious zeal and meticulous timing ordained by darker powers patiently unseen. The betrayal fell without warning. The word-bearers shattered Guilliman's fleet and swarmed the surface, where Ultramarines fought, surrounded by former brothers. At Calth, the war ignited into a nightmare. Loyalists driven back across continents and disciplined resistance struggled to form amid orbital ruin and the methodical slaughter of troops caught unprepared for fratricidal war of such magnitude. The traitors exulted, believing vengeance had come at last for Monarchia on Kur, the perfect city raised by imperial decree decades earlier. They remembered humiliation before the Emperor, punishment for devotion that defied the imperial truth, and now answered it with annihilation. Each victory stroke was offered as sacrament to their new gods, proof that faith unbound could topple even the most ordered legion ever forged in the Great Crusade for humanity and order. Yet, Guilliman's flagship endured, clawing back from devastation through emergency repairs before rallying surviving vessels into a coherent force. Assessing losses with unsentimental clarity, he transmitted an urgent astropathic call to McCraig, summoning reinforcements and preparing to reclaim the initiative from treachery with disciplined resolve alone.
Oof. Yeah, I wonder how the word bearers actually thought they were going to do in this campaign. If they were they knew they weren't going to be able to destroy all the Ultramarines there. It was just kind of like this distraction harrying force, like do as much damage as possible.
Yeah, I think that's, and it's when you have like a fanatical force like the word bearers that fits with their MO, right? Like for them, it's not about winning; it's about just wrecking as much as they can, and even in the ruin, that's like worship to their dark gods. So that's a win in their book.
Mm-hmm. And as long as they're just make some kind of strike against the Ultramarines for what happened on Monarchia, it's still considered a win to them.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just this, like, I don't care what happens to me as long as you go down with me, right? Like, how do you win against that?
Yeah. It's a pretty crazy battle. Like, it's been a while since I read this book, but yeah, it's pretty brutal. The close fighting and like the super personal and like dark nature of it. Cause yeah, those world bearers are fanatical and they are like carving you up. They're not just killing you, they're doing then a blasphemous deed to you as well. It gets pretty wild.
Yeah. And
there is a thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Also, like just unleashing on the civilian population, right? Again, they're not here to win over the world. They're here to do as much damage as possible. So like sacrificing civilians and just murdering anyone they can get their hands on.
Yeah, for sure. I heard of some folks talking about the how the word bearers should actually be the poster boys for the Chaos Space Marines, but I'll save that discussion for when we actually talk about the word bearers.
Yeah, that would be a fun little tangent to go down.
And then the people making those arguments made some very good points, like, for being honest. But again, I'll reserve that for the word bearers episodes.
But before you do, though, are you a believer then, Gerald?
Of
just a yes or no. You don't have to go into it. Should
No.
word bearers be the poster boys of chaos?
No.
No. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to the discussion.
Very, very good points, but I'm okay with Black Legion being the poster boys. But let's talk more about the Battle of Calth here, because there's a lot of stuff with this. The Loyalist Space Marines on Calth, all Ultramarines, executed a disciplined fighting withdrawal before consolidating within fortified bastions. Many had been born upon that world and held it with unyielding resolve, exceeding even the word bearer's grim expectations. In orbit, Guilliman's ship struck with calculated precision, conducting relentless hit-and-run assaults against an overextended foe. He surveyed the surface dispositions and issued exacting orders to each isolated redoubt, building scattered resistance into a unified instrument of war. A strike force under Captain Ventinus achieved a decisive breakout, seizing Calth's defense laser silos and bringing their fire to bear in support of the embattled fleet above. Though grievously diminished, Guilliman's strength endured long enough for the Greater Ultramarines Legion to translate into the system and drive the traitors into retreat. Victory purchased at severe, immeasurable cost to men, material, and future operational capacity. In reprisal, the word bearers turned Calth's orbital defenses upon the Viridian star itself, tearing at its photosphere and unbalancing stellar forces until the world below was doomed to sterility. Simultaneously, they enacted a darker design, using the slaughter as a ritual focus to conjure the vast warp tempest known as the Ruinstorm, intended to seal Ultramar from the wider Imperium and deny Terra the reinforcements that might yet decide the fate of humanity. When the storm erupted, Calth was severed from its legion, and the 13th Legion found themselves entombed beneath the surface in a merciless subterranean war against enemy remnants abandoned during the traitor withdrawal. There, in darkness and poisoned ruin, discipline and doctrine became the difference between extinction and endurance, as the conflict descended into attrition measured in meters gained and lives expended. Guilliman himself, with a substantial portion of his strength, remained beyond the world due to the earlier fleet catastrophe. Wounded yet resolute, the Ultramarines answered the directives of Malcador, regent of Terra, issued while the Emperor pursued hidden labors within the webway, and set about reorganizing their scattered might to serve the Imperium's defense with methodical purpose and unbroken command authority.
This dark ritual and turning the sun on the planet, that's so wild. Like, they just kind of... There's a lot of ways to destroy a planet in 40k, it seems. You can glass it or virus bomb it. You can blow up their sun. You could shoot the planet into the sun. You can really get creative with it. And then the battle kind of just peters out. Hey, they finish their ritual. They open the Ruinstorm. That kind of just peters. There's still like ground forces of word bearers underground, still fighting the Ultramarines and kind of just doing what they can. But like, that was kind of, they definitely achieved their goal there, the word bearers.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but wasn't there like actually a moment in this battle where Guilliman was essentially like holding his breath in space while he was just punching out word bearers? Or was that a different battle?
No, that's definitely this battle in the...
There's even a picture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, just floating around in space with a bunch of corpses around him as he punches them all to death. Like, what the... Okay. Cool. Yeah. That was a pretty wild part in the book, too, because, like, he gets sucked out of the ship, and, like, all the Ultramarines around, like, everyone thinks they killed Guilliman. And then somebody looks out the viewport and, like, oh, shit, no, there he is.
Yeah. Now he's mad.
Now he's mad. Fuck. Yeah, Guilliman's kind of interesting in like the Horus Heresy, because he gets injured a whole lot, and like, what does that really mean when you can regenerate? But like, he gets injured a bunch. He takes some hits for sure.
I do think that that's kind of a narrative balance. Like, Guilliman is a great warrior. Don't get me wrong, but like, again, like we said before, it's not his specialty. So when he goes toe to toe with some of the more warrior orientated primarchs, he does take his blows, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think even Guilliman said himself, like, I'm not the best fighter out of my brothers, because I think there was he knew obviously Angron, Lehman Russ, Lion. He knew he could not beat them, and then there was a section where he thinks he killed Alfarius, as we say he thinks, and he said he's not sure, and then he would say like he wasn't exactly sure that was the real Alfarius because he always swore up and down Alfarius was a better warrior than him.
Yeah,
So.
Interesting. Yeah, he would be a pretty reliable testimony too there. If he's like, yeah, the Lion, you don't want to mess with that guy. You don't want to mess with Angron. Yeah, he like has analyzed them. He's written books on them, on their like different fighting styles. He knows he can't.
Mm-hmm.
All that being said, someone who knows their limits doesn't mean they're not good either. Like Guilliman is also no slouch. I think he's like pretty competent all arounder. I hate to bring tabletop rules into the discussion because I don't think they're very reliable, but he is quite a menace on the table too. Even his 30k Primarch rules back in the day. So he's definitely no slouch either. Don't think he's like a Lorgar.
Yeah, I recall he had a very cool rule on tabletop, and maybe I'm kind of misremembering it, but basically every turn that went by, he became better at fighting. It's like every turn he analyzes the situation one more time, and then he's going to hurt you more likely the next time.
He learns. He learns and adapts on the fly, and he's like picking up on your weaknesses. He's looking at how you attack. And
so there's some characters that just might one hit you in the first round with Guilliman. Yeah, he might just eventually take you out. Like you give him enough time, and he will.
I know for the 40k rules, he hands out buffs to his armies like candy. Like he's that good of a tactician. And then there was another thing where he was talking with Corvus Corax, and Corax always talked about in the simulations like he might have been able to get like 1 or 2 wins off of Guilliman, but then if you tried that same trick again with him, Guilliman's going to recognize it and be able to beat it. So like you might win isolated battles with him, but you cannot out strategize him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll win the long game. For sure.
Yeah, well, like even during this the Battle of Calth, even after ambush, even after his whole fleet kind of gets destroyed, he's like, you know what? Quick repair, rally, and we're back at it, boys. And like the plan's all turned around now,
Yeah. I think one lore tuber said, like, as far as like raw strength and fighting ability, like Guilliman's like perfectly average, like in the middle of all of them. So, which I mean, that still makes him a pretty competent fighter. Like if you're in the middle of like 18 to 20 Primarchs, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Cool. So we'll go into the Shadow Crusade next. The Word Bearers aren't done yet. The Shadow Crusade formed a principal campaign of the Horus Heresy, the second great theater in the Eastern Fringe alongside the Calth Front. It was conceived as a war of annihilation, prosecuted by the Word Bearers and the World Eaters against the 500 worlds of Ultramar, aiming not merely to conquer territory, but to cripple the strategic foundation of Guilliman's domain. While the Ultramarines reeled at Calth, Lorgar advanced with a separate host, joined by Angron and the World Eaters, striking deep into the remaining worlds of Ultramar. His purpose was singular, to bring into full being the Ruinstorm, a warp cataclysm that would seal Ultramar and half the galaxy behind an impenetrable veil, severing the largest legion from Terra at the moment of greatest need. Though the storm had been first kindled during the catastrophe of Calth, it required sustained atrocity to reach maturity. Lorgar therefore unleashed a campaign defined by excess and devastation, a calculated harvest of suffering to empower forces beyond mortal comprehension, ensuring that each destroyed world served not only military aims, but an architecture of greater strategic isolation. Just thinking about the Ruinstorm here and this like massive warp storm and like other ones like this that have happened. There's like the Eye of Terror that happened, and like what had to happen in order to cause that, like a whole empire for thousands of years doing debaucherous things caused that. Like there is some heinous stuff going on during the Shadow Crusade against the 500 worlds to like generate enough warp energy, turbulence and stuff to rip the galaxy in half again. Or for the first time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a little bit counter to what I said earlier too. It's cool that it does give the word bearers a reason to be like horrifically evil. They're not just being sadistic for being the sake of being sadistic or because we're the bad guys. They actually do have a strategic purpose in that, like these dark rituals do achieve a strategic aim.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The advance soon denigrated into indiscriminate slaughter. Angron's compulsion for total destruction repeatedly delayed progress, as entire populations were butchered, regardless of tactical value. Friction between the primarchs escalated to open confrontation, halted only by a sudden intervention of raiders from the Dark City, whose attack forced a temporary alignment of purpose between the uneasy allies. Among the fiercest engagements was the Battle of Armatura, where colossal Abyss-class warships tore through the formidable Ultramar defense. Amid the carnage, Lorgar perceived that Angron's implanted nails were consuming him beyond recovery. Seeking to elevate his brother into a weapon fit for the Dark Gods, he resolved to uncover the origins of the implants upon Nuceria, dispatching devastation across Ultramar while he pursued this design. Worlds such as Talasar and Perception suffered in the traitor's wake as the fleets fragmented into marauding groups, spreading terror with ruthless efficiency. Each system attack contributed further to the mounting psychic toil required to empower the growing warp tempest, turning Ultramar into a battlefield and a ritual ground.
Yeah. We'll continue with this Shadow Crusade. Upon reaching Nuceria, the Primarchs discovered Angron's former comrades slaughtered and his legacy defamed by the ruling caste. Enraged beyond reason, he ordered the planet purged. It was then that Guilliman arrived with a hastily assembled fleet intent on exacting retribution for Calth and halting the destruction of his realm before it became irreversible. Despite being heavily outnumbered in capital strength, the traitor armada engaged the Ultramarines in a brutal orbital battle. The Loyalists' numerical advantage allowed them to break through the blockade and land forces upon the surface, even destroying one of the enemy's mighty battleships at grievous cost, demonstrating that discipline and coordination could offset disparities in raw power. On Nuceria's surface, Titans and Astartes clashed in a war of apocalyptic scale. Guilliman confronted Lorgar directly, their duel a contest of ideology as much as strength. The arrival of Angron shifted the balance, driving Guilliman back through sheer ferocity until intervention by his sons enabled withdrawal, preserving the Legion's command structure. The outcome fulfilled Lorgar's design. Harnessing Angron's unrestrained fury, he enacted a ritual of blood and ascension, channeling the power of Khorne through his brother. Angron emerged transformed into a monstrous avatar of war, freed from mortal limitation and remade as a living engine of slaughter at the very moment the Ruinstorm reached its zenith. With their objective achieved, the traitors withdrew, leaving devastation behind. The empowered storm spread across the Ultima Segmentum, sundering the Imperium and isolating loyalist legions from Terra. Cut off from the Throneworld, Guilliman gathered the stranded forces at Macragge, where necessity compelled the creation of a secondary imperial authority to preserve order in the Emperor's absence. Even as the war's focus shifted toward Terra, Ultramar continued to burn. Remnants of the Shadow Crusade persisted as roaming fleets and massacres ensured that Guilliman's realm remained a contested bastion rather than a secure refuge, and forcing him to wage a prolonged campaign of restoration while the fate of humanity was decided elsewhere. Yeah. We have Angron's ascension into demonhood. It's I can't remember when or where Mortarion ascends, or who's the other what's his name?
Fulgrim?
No.
Magnus.
Yeah, Magnus. Does Magnus ascend after his planet gets torched? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Part of that, or long after?
Yeah, at the end of that, I believe, like he does this huge ritual and gets transformed.
Okay, because it seems like at the very least for Fulgrim and Angron, they almost kind of get duped into becoming demon primarchs. It's like not even them that choose it.
I think all of them kind of do, though, and that's the not the beauty of chaos, but that's the crazy thing about chaos. None of them really had a say in it. They all were duped into it, or like, you know, even Magnus, he didn't want chaos. He was trying to warn the Emperor, and it got turned on, and like escalation, you know, tricked and plotted against. So,
and then it becomes a question of, do you just do that to survive even? So like, he did. And I know Mortarion kind of gets tricked by his first captain there, who is the actual devotee. But I don't know if that actually materializes his full ascension to demonhood necessarily. I just don't remember.
It was. I'm sure we'll go over in the Mortarion episode, but like Typhus sells out the entire legion while they're en route to what I think was like Terra or something, right into like a warp storm. So then they're like basically put in Nurgle's clutches. And so it was Nurgle basically torturing the entire legion until Morty finally says, okay, I'll join you.
Yeah. So all of them are kind of, like we said, duped into. That's a really cool picture.
Yeah. I was just thinking like the rage Angron must have felt towards Guilliman, where like he must have just seen the rulers of his like of New Syria in Guilliman, like this elite noble kind of like, maybe not as evil or whatever, but like kind of the same vibe, like this.
Yeah, even from the Roman aesthetic that the New Syrian, like we talked about him being like a Spartacus type character. Well, Spartacus rebelled against the Roman Empire, so
cool picture up there. Never seen that one before, but it's basically Angron and Guilliman facing off against each other. But yeah, it's kind of crazy during this Shadow campaign. Guilliman, like we're talking about how good of a swordsman he is and like where he ranks. Like he fights Logar at this point, and he's having kind of a hard time with him. He's managing, like he's got other shit going on is the thing. It's not like a single honorable battle, this one. And he manages his own against Logar, and then Angron comes in, and he's able to like at least tactically withdraw when getting hammered by both Angron and Logar, and still able to kind of survive and get out of there. And
not to divert too much either. Is this the world where Angron gets stepped on by a Titan? Is this?
Yeah, it is.
I think so.
Yeah. Very cool battle. Like lots happens. The transformation of Angron, super cool. And then Guilliman's just kind of forced to go back to his kind of McCraig and just like, okay, let's regroup again. Like Galaxy's fucked.
What went wrong? But so I guess while he's that actually segues into our next part where we talk about the Imperium Secundus. Severed from Terra and the wider Imperium by the vast warp tempest known as the Ruinstorm, unleashed through the treachery at Calth, Guilliman judged that the Emperor's vision of a united humanity stood on the brink of collapse, its survival no longer assured by distant authority. Unable to determine whether Terra had fallen or even if the Emperor yet lived, he resolved to preserve the principles of the Great Crusade by establishing a provisional Second Empire, the Imperium Secundus, conceived as a bulwark against total dissolution. In later reflection, he would regard his decision as a grave miscalculation born of necessity. And I think, not to go off tangent too far, but I think a cool thing about Guilliman's character overall, both 30K and 40K, is like he, unlike a lot of his brothers, he does have like that self-reflection of like, okay, maybe that wasn't the best decision. Maybe destroying Monarchia in front of Lorgar was not the greatest thing to do.
Yeah. Did he kind of expand the thought of why he didn't think Imperium Secundus was the move? Was it just like a distraction on his end, or like?
I can't remember. I want to say it was once they, if I remember correct, like as soon as they found out that the Emperor is alive, Terra still stands or whatnot, he immediately dissolved like the entire idea, because it would have appeared as a like him just trying to go behind the Emperor's back, essentially. Yeah. Like it would have been really bad optics for him, Sanguinius, and I think it was the Lion when they did that.
Yeah, like they didn't want to give off the impression of a second heresy.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was like acting under like false information and made a wrong choice, I guess. And like, yeah, maybe if he had the right information, knew that the Emperor was still alive behind the Ruinstorm, maybe he would have tried to push that way more, you know, maybe that would have then saved him in the end. I could see how, yeah, you know, it's cool to build this grand new empire and like try to hold this crumbling empire together. But yeah, if you don't know the full picture, then kind of seems like a distraction.
Yeah. Loyalist forces stranded beyond the storm were drawn to Macragge through activation of the ancient Zenith construction on Sotha known as the Pharos, a device that projected a guiding signal through the warp comparable to the Astronomicon's light, restoring navigational certainty amid the surrounding void, and possibly attracted the Tyranids.
And that's another reason why the Imperium Secundus was no good, eh? Jeez.
Yep. Whoops. Guided by that beacon, remnants of the shattered legions and other loyal formations reached Ultramar. Guilliman, wary of mirroring Horus's ambition, refused the mantle of Emperor, instead urging his brother Lionel Johnson, newly arrived with the Dark Angels, to assume leadership, despite profound doubts regarding the Lion's intentions and methods. Because there was that, because need we remind you, if we went over this in the Lion episode, but like when they were on the hunt for Kurz, the Lion was pretty much prepared to like bombard an entire section of Macragge, and which happened to be where Guilliman's adopted mother lived. He's like, no, hold on.
Hold on. Yeah.
During the formation of Imperium Secundus, Guilliman survived an assassination attempt by Alpha Legion operatives masquerading as trusted Ultramarines. Oh, I love the Alpha Legion. Soon after, Conrad Kurz, having concealed himself aboard the Dark Angels flagship, descended upon Macragge. Guilliman and the Lion engaged him directly, only to be drawn into a calculated ambush.
Rather than submit to capture, crews triggered demolition charges, collapsing the structure around them. Survival came only through intervention of the loyalist Iron Warrior Barbarous D'Antioch, whose activation of the Pharos translated both primarchs to Sotha, preserving command continuity at a crucial moment. Upon returning to Macragge, they were joined by Sanguinius and the Blood Angels, newly arrived after their ordeal of Cygnus. Guilliman designated the Angel as regent, ensuring that no single figure would claim imperial sovereignty, thereby maintaining legitimacy without invoking the title of emperor. Even so, governance proved fraught. Guilliman and the Lion clashed repeatedly, particularly over the pursuit of Kurz and the internal unrest. The Lion advocated uncompromising measures, insisting that the Night Hunter orchestrated rebellion and demanding martial law, while Guilliman resisted policies that would erode the civic foundations he sought to preserve. When a suicide attack struck an Astartes convoy, the Lion imposed martial law unilaterally. Further, conflict arose over insurgency in Illyrium, where he proposed deploying weapons of mass destruction to flush out Kurz. Guilliman opposed such indiscriminate devastation, compelling a conventional assault that ultimately secured the Primarch's capture. At Guilliman's insistence, Kurz was subject to public trial. There he revealed that the Lion had secretly authorized orbital bombardments in defiance of explicit orders. The disclosure provoked near-fatal fury, threatened to reduce the proceedings to execution rather than judgment under the law. Outraged by his brother's breach of principle, Guilliman and Sanguinius ordered the Lion to depart Imperium Secundus space. Yet in time, acknowledged that zeal had driven him towards the very excesses he opposed, the Lion sought redemption by assuring responsibility for Kurz's confinement, accepting the burden of guarding a brother he had failed to destroy. Yeah, Imperial Secundus. Everyone knows Empire runs best when you got 3 El Presidentes. Yeah, that's kind of the story of this. It's just like you have these characters of such massive charisma and power, and they have their own way of doing things, and they just kind of butt heads, even though they're on the same sides, even though like, well, your options are this or fucking chaos. Like, can we work together? No, you still want to orbital bombard planets? Okay, well, we can't work together then.
Yeah.
it's crazy when Guilliman loses his cool. Is like he's like one of the most level-headed primarchs given into that whole logistical superpower of his. So it's like it's really wild just like to see him just finally lose it.
That is actually something that happens to him too at Calth, where he kind of snaps after he gets launched into space. So he is known to get pushed to that level, but yeah, that's not typically what he's doing.
I mean, I would too if I was thrown out into space. So
without your helmet.
Yeah, pretty wild. This, it sounds like it would have been such a cool concept. You know, lots of people talk about if in 40K, when the Primarchs come back, we can set up this grand organization of Primarchs to run the joint, and like this person can do X and this person can do Y, and like, but it doesn't work. They tried it in the Imperium Secundus with Roboute Guilliman, the master organizer, and they still couldn't manage such a feat.
Yeah, they had it all. They had all the best cards. They had the Lion, the best like military general. You have Guilliman, the best organizer and statesman, and then you had even Sanguinius, like the best charismatic figurehead. And they couldn't. And you know, I kind of like that. I do like that. Yeah, it kind of is a shot at everyone who's like, yeah, the Primarchs coming back will be a new golden age for the Imperium. Like, maybe it's just going to lead to more problems, actually.
Have you heard of this thing called the Horus Heresy that the Primarchs did one time?
Yeah.
Exactly. I never once thought that when they were bringing back the Primarchs. I was thinking like, okay, we're setting up for Horus Heresy 2.0. Here we go.
I love that picture of Guilliman with the cigarette. He looks like Ben Affleck, like exhausted, and he's just like, "What is this?"
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. All right, moving away from the Imperium Secundus, we have the Second Battle of Davin. Following the judgment of Conrad Kurz, Sanguinius, Lionel Johnson, and Guilliman concluded the Imperium Secundus had fulfilled its purpose and must be dissolved. Their course was clear: breach the Ruinstorm, reach Terra, and stand beside the Emperor, now confirmed alive, against the rebellion's inevitable climax. As the united fleets of Ultramarines, Dark Angels, and Blood Angels advanced into the storm, they encountered terrors beyond conventional war and reports of destructive force known only as the Pilgrim. At Anurai, traitor forces struck without warning. Guilliman survived an assassination attempt by wordbearers wielding arcane and athame blades, which he secured for study, seeking knowledge that might be turned against the enemy. During the Battle of Puran, Sanguinius received a prophetic vision directing the armada to Davin, the accursed world where the heresy had begun. Though skeptical, Guilliman and the Lion accepted the necessity of trust. Both assumed the planet would be purged upon arrival, yet events would demand a more deliberate course. In orbit, Sanguinius boarded the Invincible Reason and removed the captive Kurz, intending to exploit the Night Haunter's foresight to discern Davin's purpose. He then ordered a mass descent to the surface. The Lion, furious at the risk, nearly commanded planetary annihilation before regaining control and confiding his belief that warp entities sought to corrupt them as they had Horus. Guilliman recognized the danger. Retreating to his flagship's vault, he destroyed the captured Athames, rejecting any temptation to wield forbidden power. The act was both symbolic and strategic, a declaration that victory would be achieved through discipline, not damnation. On Davin, Sanguinius became trapped within a warp rift, battling the demon Madile, while Guilliman and the Lion fought to reach him. Conflict engulfed both orbit and surface, costing Guilliman his acting flagship, Samothrace, to the demon vessel Veritas Ferrum. Yeah, so they almost walked into another trap laid by Chaos.
Yeah. So he turns down the Anatheums, but you know what he doesn't turn down? A Chaos artifact? The Gauntlets of Ultramar. He takes those bad boys. Like, these are some nice Chaos gauntlets. I'll take them, repurpose them, but the Anatheums, they were a little too much, I guess. So
was that him or was that Calgar?
No, it's Roboute Guilliman. He took them, and then like the
Calgar inherits them.
Yeah, like every chapter master inherits them. So yeah,
nice.
But you know, minor detail there.
Hold on. Let's clarify something. Athames are very much like warp tainted. Like, they're not redeemable artifacts. Where you could, in theory, redeem like a piece of equipment that had been tainted.
Yeah.
Like one
Just
is
repaint it.
Yeah, it makes all the demons go away.
New purity seal. Spray away the demon. So the second battle of Davin continues a little bit.
Yeah, and at the Serpent Lodge, where Horus had first fallen, the two Primarchs set aside rivalry and fought as one, destroying a colossal demon engine. Their unity restored command coherence at a moment when division would have meant annihilation. Sanguinius ultimately escaped the warp, and Loyalist forces withdrew. Davin was eradicated by cyclonic torpedoes, severing its link into the immaterial realm and banishing the demonic armada that had shielded it. In the void left behind, a passage through the Ruinstorm appeared, leading directly toward Terra. Yet reconnaissance revealed a massive traitor blockade waiting beyond, proof that Horus had anticipated this development and prepared accordingly. Guilliman and the Lion resolved to engage the enemy directly, allowing Sanguinius and the Blood Angels to slip through the breach amid the battle's confusion. The Angels' visions foretold that their arrival at Terra was essential to prevent ultimate defeat. The plan succeeded. In the months that followed, the storm began to dissipate, restoring navigational routes. Guilliman assembled all available Ultramarine forces and set course for the Throneworld. Between him and Terra lay a fortified chain of Iron Warrior strongholds. Progress required a relentless series of assaults, each costly, each necessary, grinding forward through calculated attrition rather than reckless advance. I mean, you're essentially trying to beat the Iron Warriors at their own game. So that's interesting. At last, the final barrier fell. Guilliman ordered maximum translation speed, driving his legion toward Terra with uncompromising urgency. He arrived only hours too late, as the decisive confrontation of the siege unfolded aboard Horus's flagship, beyond the reach of even his formidable strength. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
It's kind of crazy that this happens to Guilliman twice, where basically the galaxy gets ripped in half, and then he has to like race across to make sure the Emperor's alive. It's kind of, I guess, history repeats itself for this old chap.
Or sometimes authors like to recycle ideas when they have to stretch out a series 40 more books than it needs to be.
Maybe.
And that's not even counting the Siege of Terra series, which that's its own thing.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh, man. Well, the Siege of Terra, because the Ruinstorm's creation, the delaying catastrophe at Calth, the devastation of the Shadow Crusade, the struggle at Davin, and the subsequent campaigns against the Iron Warriors, Roboute Guilliman found himself unable to materially aid the Emperor during the decisive Siege of Terra, despite every calculating, urging haste. Years after the Drop Site Massacre, the Traitor Legions under Horus converged upon humanity's cradle, launching their assault on the Imperial Palace in 014 M31. While assuming key Loyalist forces remained fixed elsewhere, dispersed and unable to intervene before the Throneworld fell. Though the hosts of chaos battered the palace relentlessly, the defenders endured, holding long enough for scattered Loyalist reinforcements to begin translating into the outer reaches of the Sol system. Relief was imminent, though not yet decisive, buying time measured in sacrifice rather than certainty. In orbit, Horus received confirmation the Ultramarines, Dark Angels, and Space Wolf fleets were mere hours from their arrival. The rapid decapitation strategy upon which his rebellion depended had failed. The conflict would soon become a war of attrition he could not guarantee to win. Accounts diverge on Horus's response. Some maintain he lowered the flagship's void shields out of remorse, seeking judgment from the Emperor himself. Others argue it was a calculated challenge, an assertion of dominance that demanded a personal confrontation to decide the fate of the Imperium.
Whatever the motive, the shields fell. The Emperor, his custodian, Sanguinius, and the Imperial Fists teleported aboard the Vengeful Spirit, culminating in the War Master's death and the Heresy's end. Victory came at ruinous cost. The Emperor was mortally wounded and entombed upon the Golden Throne, leaving the Imperium leaderless at the moment of survival. With the Ruinstorm finally dispersing, Guilliman set course for Terra at maximum speed, commanding a reinforcement armada exceeding 3,000 capital vessels. He came within hours of the Throneworld as the Emperor confronted Horus, yet the Astronomicon's light had failed, its master's psychic strength diverted, leaving the fleet stranded beyond safe translation range. At sublight velocities, the journey would have required millennia. Only the rekindling of the Astronomicon through the faith-fueled efforts of Euphrates Keeler and the followers restored the beacon, enabling Guilliman to complete the final approach and secure systems in the aftermath of the War Master's defeat. What he found was devastation on a civilizational scale. Terra, the Sol System, and the Imperium's core lay shattered. Guilliman refused collapse as an outcome. Exercising decisive authority, he dispatched Ultramarine forces across the galaxy to stabilize collapsing regions, suppress renewed invasions, and prepare the Imperium for the arduous campaigns of retribution and restoration that would define the Great Scouring.
Oh, man. He really just kind of, wherever he goes, he just kind of dominates and commands and takes control and turns things around. Give him enough time and he's going to turn it around. But yeah, it's crazy. He kind of makes it. He sees like Terra on fire and he's just like, well, it's not over. I guess we just start rebuilding. Fuck. What else do you do?
Yeah, he really earns his title as the Avenging Son. I actually really like that for him.
Yeah.
For sure. And well, let's actually get more into that with the Great Scouring. I'm actually really curious to see how that book pans out. Might actually get it. In the wake of
it's going to be a 50-book series.
Oh, most likely. But I was too late to join in when the Horus Heresy books came out, so this will be my entry point.
Nice. And your children will play the Age of Apostasy.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Unless they do Horus Heresy 2.0 when they release all the Primarchs for $50K.
Yeah.
In the wake of the Great Betrayal, the Emperor lay incapacitated, while the Space Marines' strength had been ravaged by treachery, defections to chaos, and relentless war. The Ultramarines thus stood as the Imperium's greatest loyal legion, and Guilliman assumed the mantle of Lord Commander with resolute authority. I mean, honestly, like, who better for the job? Like, between this and like what he does in 40K, like, who better?
Yeah, and even if the Horus Heresy didn't happen and like there was legions that were shattered and like who better? Even everyone full strength, no one better.
Mm-hmm. For years thereafter, he directed and led the Ultramarines across the galaxy, restoring worlds seized by chaos and securing countless others from rebellion or alien incursion. Concurrently, Guilliman reconstructed the legions into disciplined chapters and authored the Codex Astartes, the definitive doctrine that the Ultramarines and many successor chapters obey without deviation as the enduring foundation of Imperial order thereafter. And good God, did the 40K Ultramarines love their Codex.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Hey, at this point, yeah, he's like pen in one hand, writing some type of Imperial law, sword in the other hand, killing orcs, like whatever. He's just doing everything he possibly can to just hold the Imperium together and making new organizations. Like, well, now that the Emperor is gone, like who's going to lead us? Like, it's not really my job to do that. I will do it as an interim position. But like, then he ends up like kind of not founding the High Lords of Terra, but kind of giving them more position and more sway. And, you know, the Administratum, he sets that up as well. He sets up a bunch of these organizations to try to get things just moving in the right direction. So the Imperial Reform. The Loyalist Space Marine legions had bled away tens of thousands in the merciless crucible of the Horus Heresy. While half of the original 18 had betrayed their oath, siding with Horus and succumbing to chaos, thus the Astartes who remained to the Imperium were few, yet never had their strength been more essential to humanity's survival. In the turmoil that followed the heresy and the end of the Emperor's direct dominion, the Imperium stood fractured and exposed. On every frontier, the foes of humanity gathered their strength to strike, while innumerable worlds still languished beneath the corruption of chaos. Into this crisis advanced Roboute Guilliman and the Ultramarines, long the most numerous of the legions since the later Great Crusade. After the Dark Angels' grievous losses in the Rangdangs at Xeno sides, they were dispersed across the faltering Imperium, committed in full measure to halting invasion, rebellion, and collapse wherever they arose. Guilliman, ever the architect of order, assumed command of the Council of Terra, formalizing the authority of the Lord Commander of the Imperium, and taking upon himself the regency once held by Malcador the Sigillite. From this seat, he steered humanity's empire after the Emperor's entombment within the Golden Throne, guiding it through arduous years of the Great Scouring as traitor-held worlds were reconquered and the Imperial rule reimposed across the stars. It was the Ultramarines who prevented dissolution in this era of mortal peril. McCraig furnished recruits with unmatched efficiency, so that before long the Legion alone comprised more than half of all Space Marines. And few regions of the galaxy remained untouched by the decisive intervention. Within mere solar decades of the Horus's death, stability had been restored to the Imperium. That's not bad. A couple solar decades.
Yeah. I mean, he's essentially doing mostly by himself what it took the Emperor 200 years to do.
Well, hold on. He's rebuilding. He's not forging anew. Let's not get carried away here.
The pieces were there. He's just...
Yeah. I'm being a little hyperbolic too, so.
But it is still wild, like in how the Ultramarine numbers, like they become half of all the Astartes at this point. Like a lot of the other chapters, they just don't have the same logistical setup now. Like the Dark Angels, they lost their homeworld. They don't have all that recruitment ability again. They have to come up with new ways of doing it, you know, and a lot of the loyalists kind of fell into the same boat. Or, you know, like the Raven Guard, Iron Hands, and Salamanders, they were pretty much practically destroyed down to like a few thousand guys. So,
yeah. I was going to say it's more so I think that they just happen to be the least bloodied during the siege, that they have the most to be able to actually prosecute a counterattack, counteroffensive, and then have the most leftovers after that. But
yeah. And then they still have the setup and logistics back home, but yeah.
Certainly, to keep that machine rolling much better than the others. But yeah, I think that would explain why they had so many.
And as far as recruitment too, like I'm pretty sure we'll go over this when we actually talk about the Legion or whatnot. But I think is like Guilliman's gene seed is one of the most stable, so you don't have near as much of a risk of like defects or failures as you would say the Salamanders, the Space Wolves, and the Raven Guard.
Yeah, like it's genetically compatible with the most amount of people too. It seems like like
your failure rate won't be as high.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, all that will lead to the inevitable paternity tests that will be.
Who is your daddy?
Good chance that it's the Ultramar.
And what is his heraldry? Yeah.
Right. The second founding. After solar decades of relentless war, restored order granted the Imperium the capacity to expand with purpose and design. Determined that no single warlord would again command a mass of transhuman Astartes equal to that once held by Horus as War Master, Guilliman restructured the Loyalist legions into 1,000-strong chapters, drawing on an ancient legion formation of the same designation, dividing the 9 surviving first founding legions into far smaller second founding chapters, even as the legions Astartes were recast as the less ominous yet undiminished Adeptus Astartes. Never again would one individual, regardless of virtue or purity of intent, possess the might of a full Space Marine legion. Concurrently, Guilliman had devoted solar decades to refining a disciplined system of warfare that achieved completion only after the Heresy's end. The logic and exact structure of the Space Marine chapters form a core of the supreme treatise on war, the Codex Astartes. Its principles would redefine the destiny of the Astartes and permanently establish the framework upon which the Imperium's military power and humanity's survival would depend. The second founding of the Space Marines was proclaimed 7 Terran years after Horus's death and the close of the rebellion. Most Loyalist legions divided into no more than 5 successor chapters, yet the Ultramarines were partitioned on a far greater scale. The precise tally of Ultramarine successor chapters formed during the second founding remains unclear. The oldest surviving Codex Astartes records a total of 23, though it does not identify them. With this reorganization, the strength of the Ultramarines was markedly diminished. The majority of their warriors departed Macragge to establish new chapters upon worlds granted for the purpose across the Imperium. The fortress of Hera on Macragge had been constructed to house a force more than 10 times larger than the garrison that now remained. Consequently, large portions of its armories and manufactories were dismantled and distributed among the nascent Ultramarine successors chapters to equip their own strongholds. The Legion's gene repositories and vast recruitment apparatus were likewise reduced to match the new order. Through the second founding, Ultramarines' gene seed rose to unmatched prominence throughout the Imperium. The chapters born from their lineage are commonly known as the primogenitors, the firstborn of the new age. Guilliman's enduring legacy to the Adeptus Astartes was therefore not solely biological, but ideological and spiritual. Even 10 millennia later, every primogenitor chapter reveres Roboute Guilliman as a progenitor and exemplar. In regard to the ruler of Ultramar and chapter master of the Ultramarines, whoever holds that office, as a living model of what a Space Marine must be. Thus did the Ultramarines ascend to unquestioned preeminence among their brotherhood.
We talk about like the Imperium not being the good guys, but man, the Ultramarines almost sound like good guys. Like, well, what skeletons do they have in their closet? You know, they almost are actually the heroes that you would want them to be. Kind of a fun thought. The second founding, pretty wild. They break it all down. What a great way for GW to like let us be a part of the setting. You know, when you make your own Space Marine founding, or chapter, you choose which founding you're going to be a part of. They were polite enough to leave a couple unknown in the second, so you can be that old and revered as well.
Yeah, really cool stuff. But I mean, it's no wonder why the Ultramarines became the poster boys of not just 40K, but like the Space Marines, but like 40K in general. Yeah. Because of everything that Guilliman has put in place and what they were designed to do, not just as warriors, but as strategizers and like logistical administration. Like these are the exact people you would want to be like the poster boys for the most part.
They were icons as well. They were designed to be icons, even with their color scheme of blue and gold. You know, it's supposed to be that like era of authority and like nobility and stuff.
And I'll make a statement too that Guilliman and a little bit of Malcador, got to give some credit to him. Like those two are pretty much like the reason the Imperium was able to function in some capacity for 10,000 years until the Great Rift.
Yeah,
if you think about it.
Yeah, all the different things that they put into place, you know, that stood the test of time. It's always so funny to think about how long 10,000 years actually is. Like, fuck, that's, yeah, hard to fathom. If you're looking at the video version, I got this fun picture here pulled up. It just shows on the top all the 9 founding legions and then just kind of what spawned underneath them. And when you get to the Ultramarines, it's just like this fucking like, oh yeah, there's 100 guys there. So busy reproducers they are.
But on to other things. We have the Battle of Thessalia. Thessalia. I'm going to say Thessalia. Roboute Guilliman remained at the head of the Ultramarines, guiding both his chapter and the Imperium as Lord Commander and Imperial Regent for a full century following the second founding. In those years, he is said to have prosecuted multiple campaigns alongside his loyalist brother Primarchs, striking at the remnants of the Traitor Legions and the fractured dominions they still clutched within Imperial territory. In one such campaign upon the world of Escrador, Guilliman confronted his estranged brother Alfarius of the Alpha Legion. Exploiting Alfarius' pride, Guilliman executed a sudden, decisive assault that pierced to the core of the enemy host and culminated in a personal duel in which he slew a space marine he judged to be the Alpha Legion's primarch. Yet Guilliman and the Ultramarines proved gravely mistaken in assuming the serpent would perish once its head was severed, for the Alpha Legion bore the Hydra as its sigil, a beast of many heads. The Legion maintained unity of purpose and answered with relentless counteroffensives, pressing the Ultramarines back without hesitation, despite the presumed loss of their sire. At last, Guilliman ordered a withdrawal to orbit and sanctioned the bombardment of Escrador from the void, but the Alpha Legion endured as a subtle and malignant adversary that would trouble the Imperium for thousands of years thereafter. And during that battle, Guilliman says he thinks it was Alfarius, but it's always been said when a Primarch actually dies, each of them feels like a sudden shift in something. And even more so with the Alfarius and Omegon, because they were essentially interlinked anyways as twins. And when Dorn kills Alfarius or Omegon in the Siege of Terra, GW did confirm that was one of the twins was actually died during that, and the other twin felt it in some way, shape, or form. And when Guilliman killed Alfarius, he didn't really sense anything like that when he did so.
Yeah.
During this era, at an uncertain date, Guilliman entered into an alliance with the Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call, a singular adept of the Mechanicus who professed no dread of forbidden advancement or so-called technological transgression. Guilliman entrusted Call, who had once labored beside the Emperor within Terra's gene forges, with two mandates of profound consequence: to devise a means by which Guilliman might be restored should he fall, and to create a superior generation of Astartes that would refine the Emperor's design and correct the failures revealed by the heresy. Call would devote the next 10 millennia to fulfilling these demands. And I can see Mark has some words regarding that.
Who else groaned? He's fucking goon. He's like, I don't know. It just is awfully convenient. I guess, you would want to look after yourself. And it makes sense but I just know that this is all added after all the writing was done. Guilliman was killed, then fucking Call comes in. They added this in, and it just feels too convenient, too safe. It's weak. That's all.
Definitely a GW retcon or a poorly implemented GW retcon for sure.
Especially since we don't even get to use this cool piece of technology, really. We get a fucking Xenos witch resurrecting Guilliman instead. And she still kind of uses the armor of sacrifice or whatever Guilliman's new armor is called to kind of life support system him somewhat. But just wretched.
Well, don't worry, because that's not even a thing anymore. He's able to take it off and it doesn't affect him.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So we live in a world with no consequences.
It's the exact opposite of what it should have been. My fantasy world, I made Guilliman into a dreadnought, but
Yeah, man. I always loved that idea. Dreadnought Guilliman. Because you always want that grimdark twist. And it's not the grimdark twist isn't that he's mortally wounded. It's that he can't pick up a pencil anymore to do paperwork. Yeah. Sucks to be a dreadnought.
So you just pump him full of rage steroids and just send him out of Helldrake or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Guilliman's seemingly final defeat came at the Battle of Thessalia in 121 M31, where he was struck down by his corrupted brother Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children, now ascended as a demon primarch of Slaanesh. In their confrontation, Fulgrim inflicted a mortal wound to Guilliman's neck with a venom-laced blade, a weapon chillingly reminiscent of the anathema that had once laid Horus low upon Davin's moon. Within the Temple of Correction inside the Fortress of Hera on Macragge, Guilliman's body would endure, grievously wounded yet preserved in stasis for more than 10,000 standard years. Stricken by the poison of his former brother, Guilliman was borne back to Macragge, encased within a stasis field where he remained entombed beyond the flow of time for 10 millennia. Though physical change was impossible within such null duration confinement, countless pilgrims of the Imperial cult came to believe his injuries were slowly mending and that he would rise again when humanity's need became greatest. Almost sounds like kind of like a riff off the King Arthur legend, where he's just like sleeping in the mountain until like he's needed once again. But then they also did that with the lion too, who was literally napping in the rock.
Literally sleeping, yeah. It's just cool myth, mortally wounded. Maybe he's healing. Maybe he's better than stasis, like 10,000 years later. Yeah, great myth.
And I haven't read the Dark Imperium books, but I wonder, was he conscious or not during that entire time in stasis?
Well, the thing about stasis is it's 100% time stop. There's nothing. So
okay,
like consciousness wouldn't matter.
Okay, there is, I think, like certain Necron technologies, you can set it to where like a person can be in stasis, but they can be fully conscious. But again, that's probably like more Necron level technology as opposed to Imperium.
Yeah.
It also sounds like a completely horrific thing. Completely frozen, unable to interact and scream out, watching everything around you.
That would suck if you were
staring at a wall for 10,000 years. Like,
who are these people staring at me?
Yeah, his place of resting becomes known as the Shrine of Guilliman, and it's constructed to house his form because amongst the most sacred sites in the Imperium, drawing millions of supplicants each year. It occupied the Temple of Correction, a vast specular chamber embedded within the Ultramarines' immense polar fortress on Macragge. The structure itself was a marvel of engineering, embodying the Ultramarines' relentless precision. Its scale and symmetry overwhelmed ordinary comprehension, crowned by a colossal dome of multicolored glass, the largest ever fashioned within the human settled space, which is saying something. I've seen some of those ecclesiarchal churches where it's like, oh yeah, this one goes into the atmosphere, it's so tall. Oh, this one throws off the orbit of the planet, it's so heavy. Like, it's a very cool building. Even the techno savants of the Adeptus Mechanicus journeyed to behold the edifice, reputed to have been designed by Guilliman himself. Ultramarines chroniclers claimed the marble within could raise a mountain, and the adamantium and plasteel incorporated into its frame might suffice to forge a formidable Imperial battle fleet. At the heart of the monument stood Guilliman's immense marble throne, upon which rested his noble but lifeless form. Despite the passage of nearly 10,000 years, the Primarch's body remained flawlessly preserved, the fatal wound inflicted by Fulgrim's blade still stark upon his throat. This preservation was achieved through the stasis that saved him from the entropy of normal space-time, trapping all within the absolute temporal suspension. Nonetheless, some observers insisted that the subtle alterations could be seen, claiming the Primarch's injuries, slowly showing signs of gradual restoration. Others dismissed such reports, clinging the absolute scientific impossibility of change within stasis. Yet belief proved stronger than skepticism, and generation after generation journeyed to Macragge to witness what they deemed to be the silent miracle of the Primarch. Whew, spicy. And after all that, he still serves, he's still being useful. Even after being mortally wounded, he's still like, yeah, if I can be an anchor for the Imperium, sure, put me up on display.
Yeah. There's a corpse. I don't remember what university. It's one of the more prestigious universities, I think, in the UK. But they have the preserved body of Jeremy Bentham. He was a philosopher from, I can't remember what era, maybe the 1700s, I want to say. But his body is just sitting in a chair, totally preserved. And I think as a practical joke, once a bunch of college students stole his head at one point.
Fuck.
Oh my!
Oh, those silly college kids.
I don't know if it's still on display, but yeah, it was for a long time, which is kind of crazy.
Man, and this was so cool. Like, before Guilliman's return, make of it what you will. Like, this is such a cool myth. All the Primarchs kind of had their own way of dealing with stuff where it's like Layman Russ goes into the Eye of Terra to hunt traitors, and, he'll be back in the wolf times. But yeah, this one I really liked. It just kind of, I like that it's still tangible. Like it is a piece of connection to the past. Like 10,000 years ago, it's all myth. It's all legend. Like even the artwork, what artwork could survive 10,000 years? But like here sits like an actual piece of it, an actual thing from then. Roboute Guilliman, there he is. Like
Not just a thing, a person.
Yeah. Like this is a tangible thing.
Yeah, like imagine if you could unfreeze like a pharaoh or something from like ancient human history. Just like, no, this person lived that time. Like,
yeah,
if they were able to be like resurrected or whatever, like they were there 10,000 years ago with their own eyes and like their own, like interacted and ruled over and walked amongst people. It's pretty cool.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit of his personality. He has none. Next topic.
His personality. Spreadsheet.
Yeah. No. He is a high achiever. He knows this about himself. Sometimes it feels like a fault that he has to excuse to his brothers, but then he feels guilty for making excuses. He writes a great deal. He codifies everything. Information is power. Technical theory is victory. He uses a stylus, but by choice, recording in his own handwriting. He has been writing notes on Tevanti war practices for 17 minutes. But he has still noted and marked 1,500 data bulletins and updates that have tracked across the secondary screens to his left. He sees and reconciles everything. Information is victory. An extract from Ultima Operational Record 1136.27.5. Yeah. Pre-heresy. During Roboute Guilliman's early years in the Great Crusade, his personality was defined by disciplined optimism and patrician certainty. He believed utterly in the Emperor's vision and in humanity's capacity for ordered progress, seeing conquest not as mere destruction, but as a foundation of a rational, enlightened galactic state. Methodical, pragmatic, and administratively gifted, he preferred careful planning over reckless heroics. Yet he was far more cold. He genuinely sought to build functioning societies behind the advancing battle lines. To his warriors, he was a stern but fair father figure, demanding excellence while rewarding competence. In this era, he embodied the ideal of the philosopher king in armor, confident that reason, structure, and law could tame the chaos of the stars. During the Horus Heresy, that certainty fractured but did not collapse. Betrayal, especially the treachery at Kelth, hardened Guilliman into a far more guarded and severe commander. His natural inclination toward order became a defensive necessity, expressed through tighter control, stricter doctrine, and an unyielding focus on survival and containment. He felt the loss of brotherhood amongst the Primarchs keenly, yet he refused to despair, channeling grief and anger into relentless strategic purpose. Rather than seeking vengeance alone, he attempted to preserve what could still be saved, even building a provisional empire in Ultramar to keep the dream of human civilization alive. In this crucible, he evolved from an idealistic architect into a wartime statesman, somber, burdened, but unbroken. By the time of the Great Scouring, Guilliman's personality had matured into something colder, wiser, and more institutional. Victory had come at an unimaginable cost, and he no longer trusted in grand heroic unity to safeguard humanity's future. Instead, he turned to systems, laws, and permanent structure, most famously reorganizing the legions to prevent any single warlord from ever threatening the Imperium again. Though still driven by duty, there was a palpable melancholy beneath his resolve, a sense that the Imperium he now served was already drifting from the noble dream he once helped build. He ruled not as a triumphant conqueror, but as a custodian of a wounded empire, determined to impose stability even if inspiration had faded. In this phase, he became less the visionary builder and more the iron steward of survival.
Yeah. It's a very subtle change in his personality, and you would have to like know him to see it. But he gets weathered. He's not worn out, but weathered and experienced and heavy with like responsibility and burden, where like some of the other primarchs, they don't have that same loss at the end, where it's like, I built this huge empire, I've seen my empire collapse, like it's never going to be the same. He realizes this. Maybe there's some more idealistic ones that don't realize that it will never be the same again and still fight on, you know. But yeah, he's got that heavy burden of responsibility eventually, and just like you can see underneath his eye that there's just like loss. Loss of what could have been.
Yeah, I love that. I honestly love his like character evolution. You know, like that starting out, it kind of reminds me of like most people, right? You in life, you're like young, you're a child, you're just an optimistic person, like looking at the world and all the possibility, and then you become like a teenager, and then, you know, a young adult, you're kind of like jaded a little bit. You've taken a couple of hits in life, you're starting to realize that everything's not sunshine and rainbows. And like obviously this is different for everyone, but in the most broadest brush strokes, you know, like you become a little more world weary. And then in your old age, you're kind of like a lot wiser. You're like, you know, I was really foolish in my 20s, and, you know, you like decided to, you know, be more, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, you're just like a little more like wiser than you used to be, you know?
Yeah. And when he comes back in 40K, like the meme of the Ultramarines and the Ultra Depression, like really just sits in. And,
Ultra Depression, did you say?
Yeah, that's been a meme. It's like, like the one with Guilliman and the cigarette looking like Ben Affleck. That's like, oh yeah, that's Guilliman and his Ultra Depression.
I actually I love that too, and that's something we didn't really touch on is him in 40K. Like I've said this before. One of my favorite 40K quotes of all time is Guilliman when he's confronting the Emperor and he's like, "Look what they made of our dream." Like that is peak. That is peak 40K. Like,
Guilliman meets the Emperor quote. I'm gonna
literally one of my favorite quotes from 40K.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we've quoted that. We've quoted that before.
It's worth it again if we find it though.
Yeah,
I'm pulling it up. Whoop.
I'll just maybe make a quick point while you're finding it. I like that, like one of the things he loses is that kind of full faith in humanity, and instead he turns to like laws and systems. Like he can control these are predictable. Like he sees humans as just like there's just that little 1% chance of unreliability that now you have to counter, and unpredictability. So yeah, he just writes everything down and makes sure that every scenario has, here's the 10 steps you do if this step happens. And that's the only way now he can kind of manage.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I found the quote, or most of the quote at least. This is when he meets the Emperor in 40K. Why do I still live? What more do you want from me? I gave everything I had to you, to them. Look what they made of our look what they've made of our dream. This bloated, rotting carcass of an empire is driven not by reason and hope, but by fear, hate, and ignorance. Better that we had all burned in the fires of Horus's ambition than live to see this.
Fuck, it goes hard. Yeah. And going back to like the Ultramarines being like, or like really the only good guys to some degree. Like you can see, like Guilliman wanted hope. He wanted this bright future. He was building towards something. It wasn't just a war that he prosecuted because he was violent. Like he was doing it for purpose, for legacy. Damn you, Horus!
Man, honestly, Guilliman is becoming my favorite Primarch now. I hate to say it.
Okay. Hate to say it? No. Love to say it.
Love to say it. I'm jaded to say it.
Nice.
Yeah, no, he's definitely got stuff going on with them for sure. You know, there was an era of the Ultramarines where Matt Ward got a hold of him and just wrote a couple things that kind of soured the community towards them. And they weren't even that bad things. It was just stuff like Ultramarines are the best and everyone wants to be Ultramarines. Just silly stuff like that, which is like clearly Ultramarine propaganda. But like, man, it definitely took a little impact on the community there, because most people kind of look at the Ultramarines like fucking nothing going on there.
I mean, they were right at that point. They were rightfully like given the Gary Stu designation, where like they were perfect at everything, bad at nothing. They can't do anything wrong. They get all the models, they get all the posters. They're like, you know, I mean, just like think about all the model releases like the past couple of years. It's just like you might get a Xenos, you might get some Chaos, Ultramarine. Here's another Zeos. Here's another Chaos. Ultramarine.
Just as Roboute Guilliman intended.
But enough complaining about models and stuff. Let's Guilliman's appearance, and I got a quote from another extract from the Ultima operational record. He is handsome in a plain way. He is handsome the way a regent on an old coin is handsome, like a good sword is handsome. He is not handsome like a ritual weapon the way Fulgrim is. He is not angelic like Sanguinius. There is a dutiful line to his jaw like his good brother Dorn. They share a nobility. There is the strength of Ferris and the vitality of Mortarion. The vitality of Mortarion. Hold on.
Wait a minute.
There is sometimes the rogue glint of the Khan in his eyes, or the solemnity of the lion. In the architecture of his nose and the brow, there is, many claim, the energy and triumph of Horus Lupercal. There is none of the bitterness that shadows Corax, or the persecuted despair that haunts poor Conrad. There is never any of the deliberate mystery that obscures Alfarius or Magnus, and he is more open than that buried soul Vulcan. He never displays the pitch of fury found in Angron, nor do his eyes ever ignite with a psychotic gleam of Russ. So he's just compared to his brothers, he's just perfectly average.
You're just perfectly average. Fuck. But that's a good way to be, man. Honestly, in the extremes you find chaos. Just be an average, simple guy.
Yeah. But I remember someone pointing out too, like a lot of these qualities is what made him a lot of people complain like he was probably the most boring Primarch in 30K and during the Heresy or whatnot, or during the book series. But like all those qualities that made him boring then are what makes him really great for the crazy shit that goes on in 40K.
Yeah, and if we see more of the Great Scouring, man, like that's going to be tight to see him in that scenario too.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
for sure.
You know, I let off the episode with the joke like Mr. Do Nothing, because the Horus Heresy isn't where he shines. Like he doesn't really do anything. Like the Empire, like he doesn't really do anything. But then it's afterwards where he's like, okay, this is what needs to happen, and takes full command.
For sure. Roboute Guilliman's appearance evolved across the eras, shaped less by age than by war and responsibility. During the Great Crusade, he appeared almost idealized, physically flawless, regal, and immaculate, the image of a noble philosopher king in radiant armor. The Horus Heresy hardened that perfection, leaving him scarred, sterner, and visibly burdened, with a colder expression and battle-worn presentation that reflected betrayal and constant conflict. By the Great Scouring, his transformation was more atmospheric than physical, still magnificent, but austere and distant, carrying himself less like a conquering hero and more like a judge or a lawgiver. Where once he radiated confidence and optimism, he now projected iron resolve, as though the dream of empire had been replaced by the duty of preserving what remained. And it's just like what Mark pointed out earlier. It's just like that subtle shift of just being jaded after, like, you know, you're young, you're at the top of the world, and then you take a few punches, and then you basically get served a nice helping of humble pie, and that's Bobby G.
And you eat it. You eat every bite of that fucking humble pie, and you ask for a second slice.
And you say thank you.
You say thank you, Emperor, for the opportunity. Yeah. We'll go into his war gear. his war gear is always described as like constantly changing. Well, more like being modified and tweaked, but like he kind of uses the same stuff throughout the Horus Heresy and Great Crusade and Great Scouring. Across the Great Crusade, Horus Heresy, Great Scouring, Roboute Guilliman war gear evolved from ceremonial perfection to brutally practical instruments of command. In the Crusade's early years, his panoply, most notably the Armor of Reason and the Gladius Incandor, was pristine, mastercrafted and symbolically rich, designed to project authority as much as battlefield supremacy. The Horus Heresy forced continual adaptations, reinforced plating, field repairs, and configuration changes, prioritizing survivability against Traitor Astartes and Primarch level threats. While personal weapon choices reflected a shift toward decisive lethality over pageantry. By the Great Scouring, his equipment had become a refined culmination of his hard lessons learned, still ornate, but optimized for endurance, command and control, and the prosecution of long, grinding campaigns. His war gear no more served merely as regalia for a conquering prince. It functioned as the tools of a warlord tasked with stabilizing a shattered Imperium. Every modification embodying efficiency, resilience, and uncompromising purpose. Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you like his 30k armor or 40k armor better? Or are they just different?
Yeah, I would put them as just different. I do like them both, but for different reasons. Typically, though, his weapon loadout, like you're saying, quote unquote, unchanging. Still rocking power fist with a gun attached, a sword, and But even that loadout speaks to like him being an all-arounder. He's got the power fist to hit hard and slow. He's got the gun to have some range capability, and then the sword for like that middle ground. He's prepared for any eventuality.
For sure.
Yeah.
This is sweet artwork. I haven't seen this one before. It looks like a mix between like some old, but anyways, very cool.
I think that's from 8th edition when he was resurrected, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Just this like bottom left corner looks like I'll try to find some artwork. So just remember what this bottom left corner looks like.
Yeah, it looks like the Codex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I'll find it if we carry on to the next little portion here.
Roboute Guilliman was arguably the most prolific author among the Primarchs on matters of war, governance, and statecraft, treating the written word as a weapon equal to any blade. He produced vast treatises on strategy, logistics, civil administration, and military doctrine, believing that durable victory depended on systems that could endure beyond any single commander. His greatest work, the Codex Astartes, codified not only battlefield tactics, but an entire philosophy of disciplined, accountable warfare, designed to prevent the excesses and vulnerabilities that had doomed the legions during the Horus Heresy. Beyond military texts, he authored frameworks for governance across Ultramar, emphasizing rule of law, efficient bureaucracy, and the integration of civilian stability within martial strength. To Guilliman, writing was an act of construction, an attempt to impose rational order on a violent galaxy, ensuring that even in his absence, reason doctrine, rather than passion or ambition, would guide humanity's defenders. And humanity screws it up again.
As is tradition.
Yeah.
We just can't have nice things.
Yeah, I love that he writes the Codex as that's a picture, Mark. You're looking at the bottom corner of that picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's the winged helmet next to the helmetless guy. They look so similar side by side in the way they're holding their swords. Yeah,
100% was inspiration for that.
For sure.
But yeah, it's funny. The Codex was written as like, I can't remember where it was I think it was in the Horus Heresy novels where Guilliman's like, use your head. Like, these are guidelines to help you, but like, be flexible, be a smart commander. And then like 10,000 years later, it's like, no, this is doctrine. Follow it to the letter. Follow it to the T. Do not divert from the Codex.
Yeah. To divert is to lose trust in the Roboute Guilliman. Yeah. Take a little extreme.
Titus knew it was about, but no one fucking Leandros. And speaking of that bitch Leandros and the Codex Astartes. I'm just going to say this here for the bit. The Codex Astartes does not support this action.
Don't support ramming dildos up my butt. Anyway, I'm sure that's also what he says, but I've never met the guy.
I wouldn't want to meet him, but anyways, the Codex Astartes stands as the definitive doctrine of the Space Marine chapters, regulating every dimension of their structure, discipline, and conduct of war. For any conceivable battlefield condition, it prescribes exhaustive methods by which victory may be secured through preparation, precision, and overwhelming force. Drawn from the hard-won experience of countless Imperial champions, it codifies matters ranging from the heraldry and formation to planetary invasion, spiritual duty, and the orchestration of supply, binding them to a single unified vision of war. Composed and ratified in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy by Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, the Codex became both blueprint and covenant for the reborn Adeptus Astartes. Certain chapters, foremost among them the Ultramarines and their direct successors, revere it as sacred law and adhere to its mandates without deviation. Others apply its teachings with measured flexibility while still acknowledging its authority. Together, these forces are known as Codex chapters. Within the Ultramarines themselves, every battle brother is required to commit extensive passages to memory, ensuring that each company embodies a living archive of Guilliman's design. Beyond the Adeptus Astartes, the Codex has also informed select Imperial military bodies, such as the Ultramar Defense Auxilia. In these applications, its principles are translated from mortal soldiery, yet its central doctrines, order, discipline, coordination, and decisive action remain unchanged, extending Guilliman's strategic vision across all who fight in the Emperor's name.
Oh, I like this one comment. It says the Codex is is the Imperium's greatest weapon, knowledge and control. Yeah, for sure. Like this has kind of been what has allowed the Imperium to survive 10,000 years without, crumbling into another Horus Heresy, while still being able to expand or defend and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, without kind of this document, it would have been kind of crazy. People fought him on the. Go for it.
I was gonna say it's funny too because like in the game Bolt Gun, for anyone that's played it, it's like essentially like a Doom copy, but with like a Warhammer coat of paint. You're playing as an Ultramarine captain, and if you let his character sit idle enough, he actually like pulls out like his own copy of the Codex Astartes and just starts flipping through the pages.
Nice. Yeah. There has been a lot of different passages written from the Codex Astartes. It's one of those things that you could just keep writing and put it in there, find a slot for it. I did find a couple excerpts that we'll kind of go over, but there are many, many, many more. They shall be
entire codex cover to cover.
No, not yet. I'm saving that for a very special episode of when I cover 40K books.
Okay.
But I got to learn to read first before I get into that one. They shall be pure of heart and strong of body, untainted by doubt and unsullied by self-aggrandizement. They will be bright stars in the firmament of battle, angels of death, whose shining wings bring swift annihilation to the enemies of man. So it shall be for 1,000 times 1,000 years, until the very end of eternity and the extinction of mortal flesh. For our enemies will bring us to battle on the caprice of chance. The alien and the renegade are the vagaries of the galaxy incarnate. What can we truly know or would want to know of their ways or motivations? They are to us as the rabid wolf at the closed door that knows not even its own mind. Be that door. Be the simplicity of the steadfast and unchanging, the barrier between what is known and the unknowable. Let the Imperium of man realize its manifold destiny while without its mindless foes dash themselves against the consistency of our adamantium. In such uniformity of practice and purpose lies the perpetuality of mankind. And that gives a little Codex passage that I'm not even going to attempt to read. Gather your wits as the traveler gauges the depths of the river crossing with the fallen branch before wading into the waters. That's fun. If you know both yourself and your enemy, you can win 100 battles without a single loss. The clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy, but does not allow the enemy's will to be opposed on him. A little rapey there, but okay. Without combat knife, bolt gun, and grenade, the Space Marine shall assail his foe. The chain sword is the will of the Space Marine made manifest. The Space Marine shall master all weapons, all battlefields. When hurried, the Space Marine shall drive his enemies back. The Space Marine will never know defeat. The tactical squad shall draw the enemy's fire, thus allowing the devastated squads to attack from the position of strength. Know thy duty and discharge it above all else. And they shall be the angels of death. Shells, blades, fire or claw, none shall slow the march of the power-armored Space Marine. Look to your war gear, brothers, and let it never leave your sight. Your armor is your life ward, and your bolt gun is the Emperor's wrath incarnate. A planet's skies are the battlefield just like any other. Understand them, dominate them, drive your foe from them without mercy. In this way, you shall secure victory. To die without purpose is not a service to the Emperor. It is a heresy to waste lives entrusted to you as an Imperial officer. There is nothing more shameful or disloyal than a righteous retreat. But in withdrawing from the enemy's presence, allow him to never scour. Skewer? That which cannot be saved must be destroyed. Leave no weapons, armor, transports, food, or water in your passing. Scorch the earth at his feet and leave him desert and desolation as his victory gifts. Nice.
I got another Guilliman quote for 10th edition. Another 40k Guilliman quote. That's pretty cool. If we have time for that,
you can read it right now. Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually the quote that Guilliman gives, like, to bring in the 40k's 10th edition, and it goes something like this: "Victory. That is what the preachers cry from the spires of their temples. What commanders tell the soldiers in their service. The Indominus Crusade meets with triumph after triumph. Day by day, we tear Imperium nihilists from the despoiler's grip. And though we are beset on all sides, with each battle, we drive back the mutant, the heretic, the alien. As I speak these words, our forces engage the remnants of Leviathan, reclaiming lost worlds, atoning for old shames. A crusade to cleanse the stars, taking the fights to the enemy. We routed the Tyranids at Baal. We broke their high fleet. Soon their foulness will be but a memory." That is what the preachers say. Belief will not save us. Lies will not protect us. But it is our hope that will damn us. In the spires and the slums, our people sing of victory. Victory as the galaxy burns. Victory as the Imperium rots around us. Victory as humanity rages against the dying of the light. Victory.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, he's not happy with 40k, really, hey? Like, yeah. But, like, it's sweet, man. Like, he's right on with it. Like, it seems like when you're looking from propaganda, it's this heroic place of, you can make a name for yourself on a pile of skulls as you fight off the enemies of mankind and then go home to your family a hero. But, like, that ain't happening. Like, this is just a place of death and destruction and rot from the inside. Very cool. Well, that's where we will leave it. We've mentioned Guilliman coming back in 40k many times. We'll definitely eventually be doing an episode on that. Maybe after all the Primarchs are done, we'll go back through them one more time to just do, like, where are they in 40k? We'll see how that kind of pans out. But yeah, I am glad that this isn't the end of Guilliman. Like, it's cool kind of have some Primarchs back, I suppose. It's cool kind of seeing them up and about. They didn't bring them back the way I would have liked, but whatever, a little too much witchcraft.
Mm-hmm. But honestly, like, if you really think about it, like, he is probably the best choice to bring back, at least at that point in time of the galaxy's history.
Yeah, I feel like, once again, he has no real impact while having huge impact. Like, he's not leading crusades necessarily in the same way that, like, if you brought like some other primarchs back and like really shifting power and like, or trying to dominate everything the way some might, or yeah, he kind of is just holding everything together and keeping what already exists from shattering, I got some crazy dogs barking in the background, so that's nice. Whatever. They kill raccoons all the time out here. It's fucking wild, man. Raccoons and possums. You fucking look out. They're probably out there eating one's asshole right now.
But why the asshole specifically?
I don't know. That's just what dogs and bears do, man. That's just what they do.
It's the tastiest part.
Yeah. Just what they fucking do. So let's go around the table. Final closing thoughts. Christian, you said you like them.
Yeah, I've looking at him through the eyes of like a optimist that's slowly being jaded by reality. I kind of love that. I feel seen in it. I also always liked Rome, so
I feel seen in it. Oh my god. Yeah, no, definitely it fits. Like, you bring this heroic figure back, but he's marred, he's worn, like he's like fucking yikes. Yeah.
I love it.
I was gonna say we have Christian representation. Here we go. He's happy.
Yeah.
No, it was never an obligation. I don't have to see myself in things for me to like them. But it just so happens that I do feel for Guilliman.
Yeah, for sure. Especially 40k Guilliman. Like, yeah, just great character, great kind of personality changes throughout, just slow. But yeah. Gerald, and your kind of closing thoughts on the boy?
I mean, I pretty much stated it all in the beginning. Like, I always kind of like Guilliman. Like, I rag on the Ultramarines a lot, and I fully blame Matt Ward and all the propaganda and poster boy stuff for that. But Guilliman, like, by himself, great Primarch, good, probably the best choice to, at least as far as the first Primarch to come back. Like, all around, like, very level-headed and pragmatic and practical, and something that you definitely need to like hold, like what you said, hold everything together. That's completely fallen apart in 40k.
Yeah, I like that that like believableness to him, where it's like I feel like this Primarch is actually what you want. Like, you read some of them and you're just like, why is this guy a fucking lunatic? Or like, why do they make such childish mistakes? Or like, you're supposed to be these demigod superhumans and like you can't even figure out some basic things, where like Guilliman just seems like he is exactly what you would want the Primarch to be. So, kudos to him for that. Doesn't make a very dramatic story, but it makes for a reliable story, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of great artwork from. Let's just leave you on one closing picture of him killing things. Excellent. Excellent. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. That's Roboute Guilliman. He does come back. You'll see more of him later. But the next episode, we're going to dive into his Ultramarine Legion in 30K. And then next episode, the 40K chapter. So we're going to kind of keep going on with the boys in blue. If you want to join the Patreon, don't forget you can come join the Patreon. Any money you throw our way definitely helps. If you've listened this long and you're already on the Patreon, maybe just throw me a $5. Just toss $5 my way. It won't hurt you, but it will really help grow the show and keep things kind of moving. Come listen to Lorehammer. Listen to Lore if you want. It's on a separate podcast feed, so you will have to go type in Lorehammer, listen to Lore podcast, and you find it. Over 200 short stories are kind of up there, so go check that out.
And if you like to listen to Star Wars content, come check myself and Jordan out on the Star Lores podcast, where we discuss everything from Star Wars Legends.
It's funny, Christian. I was actually just talking with my co-host, and we were talking about how we should definitely do another crossover again at some point.
Yeah, would be 100% down. I'll get my people to talk to people.
Yeah, sounds like a winner. And So speaking of co-hosts and whatnot, when you're done listening to Lorehammer, Listen to Lore, and Star Lore's podcast, come on over and listen to Grim Lore, where we talk about Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, and any kind of dark and twisted settings that we feel like talking about. We actually just recently recorded an episode where a guest of ours was talking about Evangelion and all the crazy stuff that happens in that setting.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild one. I'm not super familiar with it, just kind of the basics, but yeah, it's pretty wild, that one.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you all on the next episode. Have a good one.